Good morning to everyone, and good afternoon to everyone on the East Coast. I just want to thank everyone who's attending. We have another great turnout for our latest webinar in the NIMBL lecture series, Your Guide to Fiori Deployment. I'm Jake Geisbart, part of the NIMBL team. A little bit about us. NIMBL is a Denver, Colorado-based company. We are fully onshore, an SAP company that handles production support, project consulting services, SOW production support of ERP, CRM development, security, and we have a wildly intense in-house ping pong tournament 3 times a year. Here's a quick list of the services and support that we offer. Obviously today we'll be focusing on Fiori, and here's a list of some of the customers that we've worked with and are currently working with. Just a couple of housekeeping issues. We want to be able to answer as many questions and comments as you have, so feel free to type them into the chat box in the bottom left corner, and we will respond to them at the end of the session. Okay? All right, so let's get to it. Our speaker today is Andy Prier. Andy is a SAP UX practice lead for NIMBL. He has a background in multiple SAP technologies, including Fiori, NetWeaver Gateway, ABAP, Process Integration, and SAP UI5. He's a frequent speaker and blogger in the SAP community. He handles clients ranging from Fortune 500 companies to small and medium businesses, and he's not ashamed to admit that he's seen over 10,000 movies. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Andy. Andy, take it away.
Thank you, Jake. Good morning. My name is Andy Prier, and today I'm going to introduce you to SAP Fiori and share with you experiences I have had in the Fiori projects and successful deployments. This presentation will focus on Fiori as a technology and what deliverables you would expect from a project. So some of the topics we'll cover here is what is Fiori, what can it do for my organization, how does it work, and what apps can I have. SAP Fiori has been labeled as a new UX software. Last year, SAP announced that SAP Fiori is free after customer outcry from the cost of licensing. SAP GUI has been around for some time and many replacements have been offered, but none have shown more promise than Fiori. SAP UX roadmap clearly shows that Fiori will be the new user interface and has already been incorporated into S/4HANA. Today, professionals' workforce demand access to complete transactions and workflows while on the go. Business users cannot be certain they will be sitting in front of their computer at any given moment. Mobility and remote access to critical business processes is required. Fiori is role-based, responsive, simple, coherent, and delightful. To be role-based means the apps are organized by business role to keep functions of a role together and easily found. To be responsive means to adjust to your working conditions, whether you're working at your desk, tablet, or your phone. To be simple, meaning to perform processes quickly and with the least amount of complexity as possible. To be coherent is to be intuitive and well thought out experience. To delight the user is when so much is accomplished with minimal effort and such improved user experience. Fiori is built upon the SAP UI5 and HTML framework, which allows the fluid experience across applications, whether it is developed by SAP or written in-house. Nearly 600 applications are available today that are delivered by SAP. With all that free content, there's no surprise that some of the applications require HANA and all the benefits that come with that product. At NIMBL, we design for a mobile first and because people will want to work on the move. Reactive design for that interface constantly reacts to your gestures and movements. Use the SAP UI5 framework so the user experience is the same. Intuitive users don't need a manual to understand how the app works. I'd like to stop for a moment to have a poll question with the audience. One of our questions is what is your current position on Fiori? Okay, we'll let it sit here for a second and see probably about 40 seconds here. Okay, it looks like that we have some voting done there. I'm not seeing any more results coming in, so we'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so here we have a diagram of a new installation for Fiori landscape architecture using a central hub deployment. Starting at the top, we can see this is the user interface and where we start at. The user request is routed through a reverse proxy, and that request is then taken through the firewall. For those of you who don't know, a reverse proxy is a proxy server that makes a request on your behalf to access resources inside of your DMZ. Next, we have what we refer to as the front-end server, which has your gateway and Fiori components. We'll talk a bit about more of those in a moment. The front-end system can be used to connect to our back-end systems such as ECC, GRC, CRM, those sorts of SAP systems. And on the right, we have a HANA platform that is just used to indicate how we would be used for applications such as fact sheets and analytical applications. So I wanted to take a moment to talk about the different gateway components and how those differ between your different versions of NetWeaver. So starting with NetWeaver 7.0 and 7.01, we have two different components that would be on the back end. So those are the two at the bottom you see there, the Gateway Foundation and the Business Enablement Provisioning. Both of these are separate components, both in 7.02, 7.03, 7.31, and 7.0 and 7.01. But you can see there's a slight version difference. And then with Gateway Core, which is on your front-end server, which we discussed before with Fiori, that is the GW_core. As of NetWeaver 7.4 and forward, Gateway Core, Gateway Foundation, and Business Enablement Provisioning components have been merged into the NetWeaver Gateway Foundation, and they're installed by default. This is true regardless if the system is the front end or the back end. Both will have this same component. It's just a matter of configuration. So some of the common questions that we have is, once we know what the architecture is, now what do we do? Most of the time, the next step would be to see if there is standard applications that would fit our needs. So unless you have a very specific requirement in mind that necessitates design and development from the ground up, most likely you'll be interested in the SAP delivered applications. With those applications, there are three types you can explore. As I mentioned earlier, HANA is a consideration. More likely, the first applications you should be considering are the transactional applications. We've had great success at NIMBL implementing these standard solutions. So the first application type I'd like to talk about is the transactional applications. So to discuss it in further detail, this is the most popular, and these are typically task-based activities. Transactions like making or approving purchase orders or purchase requisitions, these applications in particular have a great impact when you're trying to get management to buy in. These applications either require SAP Gateway or HANA with the extended application services, HANA XS. But HANA is not required. Next application type I'd like to talk about is analytical applications, which require the use of the virtual data models for analytics. This is part of the HANA XS engine to display this. The VDM acts as a data provider and as a generic interface to the HANA database. It is a structured representation of the HANA database views in the SAP HANA Analytics Framework for SAP Business Suite. And lastly, we have fact sheets. Fact sheets also require an ABAP stack to utilize search models in the backend system. Fact sheets allow users to combine search capabilities and are based off of results. You can drill down into details of all things that are related to your search. For example, a sales rep is interested in a customer that is late in paying, but they claim that they haven't received any invoices. A sales rep could search for a customer, look at that customer's sales order, drill down into the customer's invoices and pull up the invoice in question and see that the address is wrong. Another poll question: would your company be interested in securing Fiori applications on mobile devices? So the next thing I'd like to show you is where you can see all of these kinds of applications, and that's the Fiori app library. So give me just a moment here and I'll get it pulled up for you so I can show you what that looks like. Okay, I hope everyone can see my, my browser here. But here I have the Fiori apps library. Here apps are separated where you can see everything by line of business, industry, roles, application component, backend, product. So here I just want to go directly to all apps, and as you might notice, everything here is separated by what your roles are. So that goes back to the role-based separation that I was talking about earlier. One of the neat apps I think is this Access Approver application. Essentially what this is if you ever have a need to approve firefighter role from GRC, and your security personnel are not directly in front of their computer, they can have this on their mobile application and they can either approve or reject based off of that request. So what's nice about this is you can go into some of these apps, not all of them have this, but you can actually click into it and you can see a demo of what it looks like just by screenshots. And you can go through and you can see what to expect in the application. Now most of these are shown in a desktop resolution, but these do also work on mobile. Okay. We have just an overview of what the features are. You can get that here, and then there's also a link to the application documentation. I want to draw your attention to the top here where we have the line of business, which is finance, SAP, GRC, and the application type. One of the big things to notice here is the database. Here where it says any DB, that means that we can use any database. And then for the really technical nitty-gritty details, we can go to this tab that's directly here to the right of the product features. And we can see which versions and when they were delivered and which one we're interested in. So we have installation, configuration, extensibility, and support. The most important thing to start off with is the installation. Here are the front-end components that we need in order to install this product. So here it's obvious that GRC is what we need. It'll give us which version of NetWeaver we have and which support stack we need to be on. For the back-end component, we have to have a OData service in order to provision this for the application to talk to the back-end through Gateway. Then there's a link to the application implementation documentation. Sounds like a mouthful. So here we have basically the same kinds of information, but it's more in detail. And then a lot of them will have configuration details here that you need to consider before you can implement the application. Another example of this would be for sales orders. Let me pull that up. To implement the create sales order application for Fiori, but there was a gotcha that wasn't realized by them immediately, and then I was able to show this. So they have a prerequisites for implementation, and one of the things that has to be maintained here is a relationship between an employee and our customers, and they don't maintain that relationship, and most clients do not. So that is all down here in the configuration task and the prerequisites. Okay. So back over here, for developers, we also have information about extensibility, support, and configuration. Configuration is just going to show us some more technical details, and then also what our OData service would be. Okay, so we should be back to our presentation now. So one of the things that we have here is how does Fiori talk to SAP? And that's essentially what Gateway and HANA XS solves. It does this through OData. Okay. Fiori is not a typical native desktop application that requires an ODBC or JDBC driver to connect directly to the database, because this requires too much overhead, and that requires a more lightweight solution for transferring data. Solution is a protocol introduced by Microsoft and is now an OASIS standard. OData incorporates a RESTful architecture. What that means is that it's tried and true HTTP methods that are used to transfer data and is represented in either XML or JSON. SAP's solution for NetWeaver systems is SAP Gateway. It handles the protocol conversion between OData and SAP structures. Currently, OData version 2.0 is supported. That is something to take note of. The current OData version is 4.0. SAP is not there yet, but 2.0 has the core features needed to transfer data back and forth. Output formats that are supported are Atom, Pub, XML, JSON, and Excel. So with our deployment options, I had shown you earlier what a central hub deployment is. I recommend the central hub deployment because not only because it requires a separate application server that is more secure against attacks against the gateway system, and the Fiori system would not be passed on to the SAP backend system. So it's kind of a safety measure. The other benefit is that it adds the ability to have multiple backend systems. So if you have more than just ERP, you could connect to CRM or GRC, and you only have one gateway system to consider. With the embedded deployment, everything is done directly in your back-end system. So your front-end system, your back-end system, it's all the same thing. So just to discuss the skill sets that are needed for gateway development, we can utilize our existing ABAP skill sets. Some project teams are concerned about absorbing yet another ABAP technology, and the learning curve is not too bad for team members to spend time with what is OData and how it works. Once that is understood, it becomes easier to associate terminology with what is the API. One thing to note is that understanding the object-oriented development principles is required. Otherwise, development experiences will be challenging. This is a very well-documented API, so it's pretty easy to learn, and there's lots of information on SDN on how to work into this. So the biggest change in the SAP world would have to be UI5. UI5 is the framework for the Fiori UI. This is basically, there are currently 2 SAP supported methods for writing and testing SAP UI5. Either the usage of Eclipse or SAP's development environment in the browser called Web IDE. Web IDE does require you to have an internet connection that runs locally, or have internet connections and run a tool locally. At NIMBL, we adhere to standards set by clients, but we also recommend using some sort of code repository. The ABAP repository will do in a pinch, but the more advanced source control systems are recommended. Some of the benefits of Web IDE is listed here. So it's an on-demand solution that's on HANA Cloud Platform. And you can have access to that with your S-user account. You can get that trial access to it. What's nice about this is you're able to extend SAP standard delivered applications just by a click. Another thing that it offers over Eclipse is it has a WYSIWYG editor. And this is a brand new feature. It's constantly being updated, and you don't have to do anything. It doesn't affect you when it happens. Also, we have templates, a templates library that's for common project layouts where you can create your own templates and you can save them. When we have solutions that are implemented, the common projects we encountered so far have either been clients asking for SAP delivered applications or custom solutions. Usually there isn't much customization required, but additional fields may be required, or there's a nuance to your business process that doesn't completely match up with SAP's solution. So we extend the solution to fit a business process when possible. Otherwise, we'll work with you to design a completely tailored application. So I thought it would be useful to have a list of project team resources that we typically come across when we're running projects. And I went ahead and went as detailed as possible if we were doing from soup to nuts, or we're doing installation, or we're having developers of every sort, and it would be a completely custom solution. All right, so we usually have a list of the usual suspects. Developers would include ABAP developers, and what SAP project would be complete without ABAP developers? SAP Gateway and Fiori and UI5 also is added to the list. For custom development, we provide a designer as well. So proposed solution fits within the SAP UI5 framework and is suitable going forward. We also will need basis, security, and those who will do the testing. Testing and marketing help ensure success for controlling your release and branding and theming when required. Okay, I think we have another poll question. Hybrid Fiori applications can use mobile device hardware. Would you be interested in using Fiori in this way? All right, move to our next slide. So here I wanted to talk about, get away more from the technical side and talk about how we run projects. One of the ways that we are different than a lot of other companies is we start off with a design thinking process. Design thinking is a process we have successfully used at NIMBL. It's used to accurately identify the problem statement and put a process in place for the team to design and implement a solution. This process focuses on determining where the most end users' needs, understanding business requirements, and creating a robust process. There's a bias towards action and creation because by creating and testing something, you can continue to learn and improve upon your initial ideas. Focus is given to user experience throughout the process. The user perception and their ability to execute a work stream effectively are markers of a successful project. So just to go through the steps here, our first step that we have is empathize. We work to fully understand how the current experience affects the end user or users in which you are designing. We do this by observing how this makes people feel. We immerse ourselves in their experiences. It causes us to begin adopting their way of thinking and truly design a solution that appeals to how they work. We take note of what needs, wants, and challenges are. Document those items as they can be deciding factors as what is in scope and drive further iterations for continuous improvement. Once these needs, wants, and challenges are documented, at any time we can go back and add this to the list. It helps us define what the user's point of view is and what are the greatest opportunity for impact that should guide our design. The third step, ideate. The user needs should always be met with our ideas that are to be offered. We shouldn't lose focus either, as the ideas will be captured and documented. We shouldn't be afraid to extend as many ideas as possible, for quantity is more important than quality. The list of ideas is the beginning of a design, and it will become apparent which ideas are signposts pointing towards improvement. Once you've formulated some ideas into possible solutions, we begin whiteboarding a low-fidelity mock-up. The process of prototyping will require that you test your design and see if it solves our end users' needs and conforming to any challenges we cannot overcome. Such challenges might include such and such functionality isn't available until Enhancement Pack 7, so we must wait until we upgrade before we can use that. The process of prototyping will often require you to revisit the previous steps. Our tests can also evolve as we design our prototype. An example might be we have a custom cost center validation that needs to be performed when changing this field. Such tests should be added to our list and the collections of needs, wants, and challenges, selected ideas, mock-ups, and tests formulate our requirements and assumptions. Once we have those agreed upon, we can begin to render a mock-up that will give our end users a true expectation of what the user interface will look like. So after we go through this process, one of the things I like to do afterwards is have a technical session because we've covered the user interface. We cannot begin to accept our design as final until the initial review of the technical team. We know that what we want the user interface to look like, and once we have a low fidelity mock-up created, we must discuss the technical team to make sure we didn't break any rules. We add any technical challenges if necessary and discuss solutions. Everything is documented and agreed upon in our final design documentation. So here's kind of a real-world example of what we do on projects. To the left, you can see we use tools like Excel to quickly document what the user interface will look like. We capture what fields specifically are required and what we want the user interface to interact. Here we have real-world examples on the application on the right that has been designed and demoed. We immediately start seeing financial benefits by following this process because we've not wasted any effort for any application development. Not one line of code has been written, yet we have an idea of what to expect. We have good requirements and test cases already identified. So just for everyone's information, the picture on the right, the high fidelity mockup, is not actually an application. It's just a mockup, so same as a wireframe. Take another moment for a poll question. If you have SAP HANA, would you be interested in using the analytical and fact sheet applications for Fiori? Okay. We recommend adopting a controlled release strategy rather than a big bang approach. This diagram illustrates how NIMBL will suggest how to release a solution, especially when creating solutions tailored for your business. Involving business users early and keeping them a part of the process when possible will increase our chances for success. This is because ownership is shared between IT and the user. Tools like the low and high fidelity mockups we create add a visual aspect that is often not realized in a design document. Most users don't know what they want until they see it. So while having requirements down in writing is important, seeing a user interface before a single line of code is written is very valuable to both the users and the development team alike. Once end users see the mockup, they should not be disconnected from the process. This is often a failure point in projects. IT thinks that they have all the requirements documented, and then they disappear into a vacuum later to have an unveiling. It is important to maintain the relationship between the project team and end users. We should demo early and often to show progress and identify issues as they arise, because it's easier to change sooner than later. So inevitably after a demo, there will be change introduced. Change has to be tested, and nobody is better at testing than the users who requested it. There should be no surprises if you've demoed often enough and shared ownership exists between IT and the user. So here's a real-world example of a successful project in which we released in waves or phases. As you can see, each wave was either introducing something new or enhancing existing functionality. For this particular project, we started off with approved purchase order, and that was released in a wave. And then it was in production for a couple of weeks, and then we started a second wave. We enhanced the same approved purchase order application and added a forwarding ability to it. After that was accepted, it was very popular, so we moved on to the create purchase order application. A structured project plan with milestones that gives stakeholders a sense of that a project is progressing. While an iterative cycle works well at handling change and keeping our end users positioned as co-owners, we also understand that it needs to work within boundaries. We still have to quantify the process that progress is being made, budgets are in line, and there is a plan, not just a solution on the fly that goes on forever. Here's a sample project of milestones that we have taken from a successful project at a large implementation. It's completely written from the ground up and closed the project on time and under budget. So we have typical phases such as project preparation, blueprint, realization, final preparation, and go live. For the most part, the project preparation that usually happens with our more functional users and our PMs. Once we start blueprint, that's when we start seeing the design sessions. We start creating the mock-ups, and we have our designer that helps with that. We have the realization phase where we actually start building the application. If you notice in between those two, there is an arrow that points back and forth between the two because there'll be some going back and forth based off of our demos and handling change. That all happens during the application build. For our more technical users there, usually during blueprint we want to have the development environment installed and ready to go if it's not already there. And then by realization we should have QA installed, and then UAT should take place in that system. Next we have the final preparation where we have our cutover plan, training plan, our production install should be in place, and we have a security plan. Lastly is the go live. If we prefer to have that kind of support, we have end user development and proactive monitoring. Once that phase is over, this whole process can be iterative the same way. Can start over again. Well, I think we've hit our time limit. I'm going to hand it back over to Jake, and he can take it from here. Thank you.
All right. I want to thank Andy so much for joining us today. I think we hit all the questions. If we didn't, we're definitely going to be having some Fiori webinars in the future. And I also want to thank everybody for joining us as well. Listen, we'd also love to hear your feedback too, so please feel free to fill out the evaluation at the end. And just to let everybody know, this webinar has been recorded and will be available on our website at benimbl.com. That's BENIMBL.com. And we're also going to put it up on our YouTube page under NIMBL, NIMBL, so you can check it out. And also, definitely want to let everybody know about some future webinars that we're having. Our October webinar is going to be the top 10 tips to optimizing your BW environment, and that's presented by Marcelo Berger. So we're looking forward to that as well. And again, I think that pretty much wraps it up. We'll be sending out info about our webinar in October in the coming weeks. And again, we at NIMBL would like to thank everyone for joining us, and have a great week. Thanks a lot.